If you know anything about the Xenoblade series, you are probably aware of who Shulk is, the main protagonist of the very first Xenoblade game and the user of the Monado. In the Future Redeemed DLC for Xenoblade 3, Shulk seemingly wants to be an evasion tank, and while he can do an okay job at this, he does have a difficult time maintaining aggro. Fortunately, he does have some strong aspects that still makes him a useful party member with valuable party support through breaking an area of effect armor veil. In this video, I want to discuss Shulk, talk about his strengths and weaknesses, and discuss how I believe to use him most effectively. If you enjoy my guide content for Future Redeemed and want to see more on this and the rest of the Xenoblade series, please be sure to subscribe to the channel because it does really help me out so much. Let's get into it. So, Shulk is a defender and of the Grand Marshal class in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Once again, I recommend maxing out his weapon as much as you can. You can reach a pretty high attack power if you do so, which is going to be pretty necessary to try to maintain aggro since that's the basis of all of your attack calculations. So you definitely don't want to have a low attack value on your tank if you want them to have an okay job of maintaining aggro. It also gives you a bit of critical rate and gives you a nice 30% block rate, so he can do some decent blocking and damage mitigation with that as well. And the critical rate isn't terrible for a tank, although it's still not super high and not something I would focus on for the specific build that I would build him for. I want to take a look at his skills now, because those are going to be the most important aspects to his success. Shulk's first skill is Right Back At You. When a nearby ally is attacked, this will deal 200% of attack and damage to enemy. So if you saw my attack value, it was about 1300. So this is 2600 damage in damage to the enemy if they attack an ally that is nearby you. This is really not that much, especially given how high damage values can reach. I don't really like these types of skills that just do damage based on your total attack stat that's just a certain percentage, because it never ends up actually being all that impactful. It's something at the very least, but it's something that I really wish was replaced with something else, just because I do think it is a fairly weak skill overall. 2600 damage isn't really that much. You'll probably do more with just any auto attack, and arts will drastically overshadow it in pretty much most situations. Shulk's second skill is grant a large increase to damage dealt the more enemies target you. Now, I don't know the exact percentage here when just a single enemy is targeting you, but this does go up to 300%. This is Shulk's main way of boosting damage. It's really useful in multi-enemy fights, and it's okay in single-target fights, but if you don't end up getting aggro to begin with, you won't see the natural benefits of this additive damage bonus. But it is his main way to increase his own damage, and if you do get aggro, that means you can keep aggro a little bit easier, just because you'll be doing more damage when enemies are targeted to you. If you do not have aggro, the skill is significantly less impactful, and it makes it also harder to get aggro if you don't have it, since you won't have this damage boost when you don't have aggro. All in all, it's a pretty decent skill for a tank, very useful if you actually manage to get aggro, so I do like the skill a fairly decent amount. Shulk's third skill is Sword of Reprisal. This will deal 300% of attack damage when you evade an attack. Now, this is once again similar to the other skill. This time would be 3,900 damage when you manage to evade an attack. Now, one thing about Shulk is he unfortunately doesn't have any kind of guaranteed evasion, so you have to rely specifically on your agility stat and on one of your other skills in order to evade attacks. And while 3,900 damage isn't like the worst thing in the world, and that's only if you have a maxed out weapon, by the way, it's even less if you do not, it's still not going to be the most impactful, and you can only get that maxed out weapon after defeating some of the super bosses, so before then you're really not going to be doing all that much, even when you do manage to evade an attack. I really don't know why two of his skills are based on his attack stat, just dealing kind of spike damage to the enemy. That's never going to be that much impactful, especially compared to art damage or any other type of damage. So I really think they could have replaced these skills and made him a lot better just by doing that, but it's something at the very least. It does have some kind of effect. It's not like it's a completely useless skill, but it could just definitely be a little bit better. Shulk's fourth skill is Mechanical Rhythm. This is a 15% chance for own attack to become a guaranteed hit and to evade enemy attacks during it. So 15% is unfortunately not that much. This is a nice skill to have, especially if you have a longer attack animation, just for basically giving you guaranteed evasion during the entire process, but only a 50% chance on basically everything you do is not really that high. This only comes into play about 1 in 5 times, if that. That makes it hard for the skill to feel the most impactful, but it can be really nice when it does manage to activate. So it's, once again, something that does work sometimes and can be useful when it does activate. As far as the non-standard 4 skills that he has on his third affinity tree, he does get better damage aggro. He gets more aggro from dealing damage, 30%. Pretty nice to try to get aggro back onto him if he's losing it. Evasion Up. This boosts evasion while his art is active by 20%, so basically this will take the agility into account and give him an evasion boost while he's using art, so you might want to time your art usage when you are getting attacked by an enemy, just to hopefully take advantage of this and evade the enemy attack guaranteed if you can. He has ranged evasion. This is a 30% chance to automatically evade any type of ranged attack. fairly decent skill. 30% still isn't the highest proc rate, but just free evasion is still pretty nice as a freebie kind of skill here, so I do like this. And then unbeatable. This is just a 50% chance to survive a KO with 1 HP and 5 seconds of invincibility. Once per battle and does not stack. This is a nice skill to have. It could be a good last resort here to make sure that he doesn't die if he's in a situation where he could die. So it's a pretty nice skill to have because of that as well. And the other two things are just boosting attack by 10% and boosting agility by 5%. I really feel like he could have done with more than just a 5% agility boost. I feel like evasion tanking's just been nerfed a lot in this game, and it's really hard to get to those evasion values where you're evading almost every attack. So I wish it was higher than 5%. Overall, Shulk's kit, for skill-wise, is not the greatest, but there are a couple aspects of him that do work out pretty well when you actually get into combat, and that has mostly to do with his arts. We'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the arts. If you are focusing on maxing out Shulk, I would focus primarily on at least getting one level of his skills, and then focusing on Natural Born Warrior as your primary skill you're getting. And then other than that, I would actually recommend maxing out some of his arts first. He has some really powerful and nice arts to use, especially the Armor Veil art. That's a pretty useful effect just for basically the entire party if it's area of effect. All around, I wouldn't recommend focusing on him over your attackers, but there are a couple nice things here that you do want to pick up as soon as you can just to make sure that he is contributing to the party in a meaningful way. So let's take a look at his arts now and discuss how those work. First of all, we have Stream Edge. This is his just generic break art that's on a 22-second cooldown. This is going to be the secondary break art compared to Matthew's much lower cooldown and easier to use break art. But it is nice just to have that second break art, and it's a reason you might want to consider running a break brooch on him in some situations just to have more chances to break the enemy. I like this art a lot. It's a really high power multiplier actually as well, 440%. I'm just a big fan of break arts in general. I feel like break is what just drives the entire combat system in pretty much all of these games, so breaking is always going to be very good. Heavy Rush is an 11-second cooldown art with 180% damage bonus, and it will boost damage dealt when awakened by 100%. So the only way to get awakened status in this game is by using a Unity combo, and for that you have to actually launch the enemy, and then you can get the awakened status on yourself. So that is something that you might want to do if you can access that, especially because Shulk scales pretty well with Awakening, because Monado Buster also gets a big damage boost when you are awakened. Since I'm already on the subject, I guess I'll talk about that now. This is a power multiplier of 875%, pretty high, a recharge gauge of 4, and deals damage that ignores defense, and boosts damage dealt by 150% when awakened. So Shulk definitely wants to be awakened to get as much benefit out as he can out of some of his arts, and in order to do as much damage as possible. So try to do that if you are able to. Some enemies that are going to be harder to break, especially near the end of the game. Some of the super bosses have really high break resist, but trying to activate this awakening stance is pretty useful. Everyone can do this by activating their Unity combo if you didn't know, so depending on what team you team up Shulk with, you could get some pretty good benefits out of this, since Awakening will reduce art cooldowns, just increase damage in general. It's a really, really nice buff effect to have. Slit Edge is a 340% power multiplier area of effect that also can apply a bleed if it actually manages to work. This is a 19-second cooldown, just a standard AoE attack outside of that. Pretty good art, not too much to say about it. On the other side, the Agnes-based arts assigned to the D-pad, we have Monado Rage. This is a target lock effect. So target lock, if it actually manages to work, is actually really nice because it guarantees that enemies will target you. Unfortunately, this is a debuff that's really hard to apply on the strongest enemies in the game. I don't know why they made it that way. I really think this should have been something that's just guaranteed to apply if you wanted him to be a more effective tank. So I really wish this was something that worked more consistently. It's not a bad art by any means, and if it does work, it's really useful. And going through the story, it'll work more often than not, because enemies throughout the story are not going to have as high of debuff resistance compared to some of the most strong unique monsters and super bosses. But I still wish it worked more consistently and more often against even some of the strongest story enemies. Monado Purge will boost damage dealt when attacking enemies targeting you by 100%, so this is really nice to use if you already have aggro. It also has a really high power multiplier and a very low recharge gauge, 390% and only a recharge gauge of 3. So this is actually really nice just to get a bunch of damage out with Shulk. A pretty useful art to have, one to consider using even if your other art you're linking it to isn't off cooldown yet. I haven't linked to Heavy Rush specifically because of the 11-second cooldown there. Shulk's fusion effects aren't the most impactful. Edge Armor is probably going to be my favorite here just because of area of effect and Armor Veil. Now, Monado Armor already says it has an area effect around users, so I'm not quite sure why it has the area effect listed twice. I think this might just be because it makes it even bigger or maybe slightly more powerful. I'm not quite sure there, but I found some decent success rate by using Edge Armor. I have Heavy Purge because there's a chance of accuracy down, which I find to be pretty impactful for an evasion tank. Even if he's in the absolute greatest at it, if you're able to land that accuracy down, you can do a better job at that. Stream Rage is able to apply a blowdown effect. There are a couple other interesting effects you can get, like you can't get an attack down, I believe, if you combine Monado Rage and Heavy Rush instead. I believe there are a couple other unique effects as well that you can consider here. This is just the setup that I run sometimes, and I've changed it up a few times. I have found that some effects can be pretty useful. A lot of the effects, though, are just mostly debuff effects, and those don't end up applying, and so you don't ever really see a ton of benefit out of that. So I just like teaming up some of the more low cooldown fusions here, just so I can access the Unity combos a little bit easier. Once again, Monado Armor, this just applies Armor Veil. Armor Veil is a buff that basically grants you a health barrier. So being able to grant this health barrier to the entire party is really nice. I really like this for just any kind of tank in general. It's just helpful for not taking as much damage, and just in general, increasing tankiness quite a bit, especially if you're able to use it more often. A recharge gauge of 7 isn't terrible for a decently powerful buff effect like this, so I do like that as well. For gems, I'm currently running Empowered Combo. This gives him a 45% damage boost to all of his cancel damage. This is pretty nice for as an independent multiplier, just so he can do more damage and hopefully gain aggro a little bit easier. Brimming Spirit also boosts aggro generated when using arts by 27%. This goes up to 30% if you have the level 5 gem, which is a 3% difference, which could be impactful, but I am lazy, so please understand. I'm trying to run this to try to help him get aggro easier. I find this to be more impactful than any kind of other damage boost that you could do to try to get aggro easier, since 40 attack and 40% critical hit damage isn't going to be that impactful because of his low crit rate and because attack stats are really high already, so this is going to be the better option to try to get aggro. You could definitely consider running Tailwind as well to get another agility boost, but when I'm already at 402, 422 isn't going to make that much of a difference, but it is something. Swelling Blessing 5 here is because of the area of effect Armor Veil. This will boost power buff effects issued by self by 35%. This makes all of your HP barriers 35% stronger, means that all of your health is going to be, you're going to be that much harder to kill, the party is going to be that much harder to kill. Really useful support effect, so I really like this a lot. As far as accessories I'm currently running, I am trying out a Titanium support to boost agility by 30%. I'm trying to build him in a way where he can function as an agility tank, as I mentioned. One thing you could consider if you're not super worried about his added to damage totals, if you're running other sources of added to damage as your accessories, or if you think the skill effects are going to be enough, you could consider running a shield belt, just in order, or a plate belt, in order to boost his survivability even further by reducing all of his damage taken. The additive effect would still give you a net positive as long as you're running something like a Sunlight Reading to boost your damage by 100% against certain enemy types. In this case, against Fog-type enemies, because I'm going to be fighting the Fog Beast Super Boss, the Odyssey, just because that's the only level 100 enemy, and I'm stuck at level 99. And then finally, just running Ceramic Belt. This is a general 30% attack boost. Pretty useful on basically any non-healer character, just to do as much damage as possible, because it's pretty much independent in the basis for all of your damage calculations. So I do like it a lot because of that. And then finally, I'm running Tactics Manual 14. This is just a really good chain attack effect in general that you should pretty much have somewhere in your party, and I find it works pretty well on Shulk. Charges chain attack gauge, guarantees you get an extra round, almost guarantees you get a good chain attack depending on your party composition. Sometimes you can get a little RNG screwed, but you're pretty much guaranteed to at least get a pretty nice chunk of damage regardless. So I really like Tactics Manual 14 because of that. And finally, if we check out the Unity tab, I'm currently running the Passage of Fate Unity skill by teaming Shulk up with A. This boosts all allies' accuracy and evasion by 15% and doesn't stack. I'm just trying to lean a lot into the evasion tank side that I think Monolith wanted him to be. There may be some better setups that focus more on just mitigating damage as much as possible instead, and that is definitely a possibility. There are definitely some things you can do in order to increase the effectiveness of that. But for right now, I do want to try to do the evasion tank method, and if that doesn't work out super well, you can definitely lean more into more of a face tank and damage mitigation build, which I've kind of explained some already with the plate belt and shield belt stuff, but otherwise, this is just something I'm going to try out. I'm also running Attack Zone to boost allies' damage by 30% and reduce enemy block rate by 15%. I haven't shown off this one yet in any videos, so this works particularly well against the Super Boss I'm fighting just because he has a really high block rate, and whenever he blocks an attack, you only deal 1 damage to him, so I really like the reduction of enemy block rate because of that. As far as Shulk's other Unity combo pairings, you can get a free Unity special with Matthew. This is not super impactful for like long boss fights, but it can be useful against normal enemies that you just want to kind of burst down and kill instantly. Teamed up with Nicol, reduces all damage to all allies by 15% and boosts health recovery by 15%. This is an incredibly useful ability just for general party support. I really like damage reduction effects like this, and the health recovery boost is also really impactful just for survivability purposes. So this is definitely a really useful pair just for the ability to help the entire party because of that. Teaming up with Glimmer will extend the duration of all buffs on all allies by 15%. I don't actually think this is that impactful just because there's plenty of ways to increase buff duration already, and a lot of the most powerful buffs aren't really duration-based, like Armor Veil and Power Charge are just usage-based instead of duration-based. So I don't really think this is going to be that useful, so you're probably never going to want to really use this Unity pair unless you just have no choice. And then finally, if you team up with Rex, this will boost damage when attacking higher level enemies by 100%. A pretty general, useful effect. It's more useful for Rex than it is for Shulk, but it can be useful to give Shulk that extra damage he might need to try to take aggro. So definitely a pretty useful effect, and you also get a Smash out of this, and Smash is probably going to be the strongest Unity combo effect in most situations. So pretty good effects here. I'm just running him with A for now just because I want to take advantage of the evasion boost as much as I can. So once again, it appears I talked entirely too long just because there's so much more to talk about here compared to the base game on the pause menu. So let's finally get into how to use Shulk practically. So I feel like this sequence that I'm going to show off here is just kind of the imperfect encapsulation of Shulk as a tank. So this was done on hard mode, this initial 2-minute sequence here. I originally get aggro here and almost get one-shot by the Ultra Play Bite, and then somehow I manage to stay alive anyway for the next 2 minutes, even when I do manage to take aggro back. Obviously, since aggro is based a little bit on how much damage the enemy deals to you, I lose it here just because of how much sheer damage I got dealt with there, and the fact that Rex is just so incredibly good at taking aggro from anyone. Even when you are directly controlling and trying to take aggro yourself. I'm able to start applying Armor Veils to everyone as well. As you can see, the area effect Armor Veil from Monado Armor is pretty nice here. And, unfortunately, I don't get hit by the bind here, and I start taking a lot of damage. I'm able to get out just in time before the final tick would have killed me there. That was 2 area of effects at once, which is why I did so much there. I am now at 28%, 28 damp health, but I'm still alright. I'm just going to continuously apply these Armor Veils when I can, and now I have aggro again, so I'm going to hopefully be relying on my evasion, trying to use these arts as he is attacking me, and fortunately I actually get a launch here. And I'm going to use the double Cyclone effect here in order to activate Shulk's Awakening effect. This will increase the damage of my Talon art, it'll increase the damage of my other art as well. So we finally have that Awakening effect, and also reduces the cooldown of all of my arts, meaning I can activate more Monado armors. So give my entire party Armor Veil give myself Armor Veil again, just to make sure that's up, and I have a nice health barrier regardless. Rex decides to take aggro again now, and I'm somehow still alive, which is pretty funny, and now I have aggro again because Rex finally died. So I evade that attack there, the tail swipe, which is really nice because of just the sheer amount of damage that it can deal. I also am getting way better break RNG compared to yesterday, which is really funny since yesterday was the Matthew video where I was directly controlling him and trying to break. And I don't want to go too long about that because it's just kind of a general strategy where you're just going to showcase Shulk evading attacks by trying to use arts when the enemy attacks you, since you don't have anything that's like a guaranteed evasion, and he gets extra evasion when you're using an art during it. So, like I said, the hardest part of that is just trying to keep aggro when you initially have it, just because it's hard to deal enough damage to keep up, especially when you have like Rex in your party. So here I'm going to try to showcase a little bit of Shulk's chain attacking prowess. It's not the most amazing, but with this chain attack order here, it's really nice. I really like the charge of chain attack effect and granting power charge to all allies, just because it allows for the useful ability to be able to use multiple rounds or an extra round of a chain attack, which is super nice regardless of the difficulty here. This chain attack is on normal mode because hard mode chain attacks don't really do all that much unless you have very specific setups that I couldn't afford to do with me having these certain orders that I had. So here, just in general, we're just going to kind of see that while Shulk can do a decent amount of damage, it's never going to be the absolute largest amount in the world. Usually when you get to the chain attack phase, Rex is just going to be carrying, and that's just going to be universal regardless, just because he's required in the party, and just because he just does so much more damage than basically everyone else. But you can definitely make Shulk pretty impactful regardless. Now, there's definitely better chain attack setups than what I am running for maximum damage, but I found the one that I usually like to run to be fairly consistent in general, which is really nice. Shulk is not an option to select this round, unfortunately, so I'm not going to be able to do that, but not a massive deal, thankfully. I found it difficult to set up Shulk to do an absolute massive amount of damage no matter what, but You can get some okay damage out of him, and he can be pretty useful as a contributor to chain attack. The tanks still have a really useful effect of always guaranteeing that you get your highest TP member back if you finish a round with them, which is always going to be a useful effect regardless. And being able to customize some of the orders is really nice because, like I said, that one order that just gives you an extra round of chain attack I found is super impactful no matter the difficulty. I might have been able to do this on hard mode with a different setup, but I feel like I wouldn't have been able to show off Shulk as much in that case, so I didn't want to do that. As far as the hard mode fight that you saw earlier, that could have kept going, like, pretty much infinitely. I would have eventually died, and I think I did eventually die in that recording, but the fight was just going to go on a super long time if I didn't end up just focusing on maximum chain attack damage, which wouldn't have been able to show off Shulk that much. So that's why I kind of just wanted to kind of show off how he does in chain attacks here. So I'll be finishing this chain attack round with Shulk instead of just using Rex, because I want to showcase, a little bit more about what he can do in some of these situations. Now, I don't get to do the Glimmer critical hit rate up and critical damage rate up. That doesn't matter because Shulk's crit rate isn't that high anyway. I end up using Heavy Rage here instead of Purge Stream. I probably should have used Purge Stream for more damage. But you can see there, nothing that amazing, but it's something that works at the very least. I could have probably teamed up Shulk with Rex for a better Unity combo finisher here, and he probably could have done a decent amount of damage there, but like I said, I don't think Shulk's point is necessarily damage. I feel like he's definitely more of a utility character with his Break Art if you decide to put a Break Brooch on him, because you can do that even if you have one on Matthew already. He definitely offers really nice utility with Armor Veil to the entire party to keep them alive while you're trying to build up that chain attack, while you're trying to keep the rest of the party members that are a lot squishier alive. And he's okay as an agility tank. It's not the greatest in the world, but it can be functional. And I feel like as some face tank and party mitigation effects, he does have a decent amount of access to that as well. So I think that is going to cover it for this video. I do hope you have learned something from watching and kind of see how to play Shulk a little bit better at the very least if you like him and weren't having the most success with him. So with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and please look forward to all of my future guides on the future connected DLC, or future redeemed DLC, sorry. Not too many characters left. I'll probably make a couple general guides as well. We'll see. So please look forward to that. And once again, thanks to you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful and blessed day, and hopefully I'll see you back here soon.